In this video, we discuss about Java scanner class and its important methods. So for this, first, what is the scenario of requirement of a scanner class? We'll understand with one example. Here is a class called class name number and which has a method called getSum, takes one integer and float input and which returns nothing. Therefore, here a print statement which performs the sum of this int and float. So this class is independent class, and this is what we have to type first or we have to write first also. Independent class code always first. Then to execute this, we consider another class and with main method. And inside that, to access one class code from another class, so the approach, one of the approaches is object creation. So create the object for this class, and then by using this object reference, using method signature, we call the method. So method name and one integer and a float input in order. So one integer, one float. So this is the normal execution, and this is called as a dependent class. And when we execute this program, so we know that we are always going to get the output of 10 plus 10.5, which gives 20.5 is output. So here the concern is, whenever we execute this program for any number of times, is the output is going to be different or same? It's always 20.5. But what if I want to give my own values instead of 10, 10.5 and get the result accordingly? So for that, this static approach of giving the input directly while calling method is not supports that customized input. Then here comes this requirement of giving the input by the customer or end user. So whenever it is a execution is happening, not at the time of method calling. So that is where, so we have multiple options in Java. So one such option is nothing but scanner class. So what it is, scanner class is a predefined class and it's present in the java.util package. So this scanner class has multiple methods. So one such method to read any integer value from keyboard. So we have a method called as next int method. So by following the camel casing standards as the method name. So next int method will not take any inputs, but what it returns, it return an integer. That's what the requirement, right? The next, similarly, to read a float value, we have a method in scanner class called next float. No inputs, and it returns a float. Similarly, to read a string in scanner class, we have a method called next will return a string. So we have one more method to read a string called next line, L capital. So here this also returns a string, but here is the difference. What is the difference here? The next method will read only string in terms of a single word. For example, Java space is space double OPS, oops language. So this is the input that we are giving. Let us assume. Then what this string next method will read? Only the first word. This will read only Java. But what this next line will read? This will read the entire line. That's the difference. So like this, we have various methods. How to read a character? To read a character, so first we have to use a next method which is string in word format. Then dot, we have another method called char at method, and which has to, we have to give one integer input as an index format. For example, to the same thing next, if you are giving this input, even here also, then if I give the index 0, then what's a string? Java, which is present at 0th position? J. So this will return a character called J according to this example. So that's why here index is mandatory, otherwise it will be a syntactically incorrect. So like this, there are so many methods, but these are the most commonly used as a programmer. So to read such type of different values, we have different methods present in scanner class. Now let's see the same example. How do we implement the scanner class? So for that, if we have the same program where a class which is having a method takes int float input and prints the sum of them, and object creation method calling. So previously what did we do? Directly here we are giving the value. But instead of this approach, so we have to give the customized input. So first, scanner class is a predefined class present in java.util package. So being a programmer, on top of your file, after package, so first line of code always will be a package statement. What are the package name that you give? That's the first line of code, and it's an important interview question. So before package statement, no valid Java code is allowed to write. Only commented lines are allowed. Then after this, we have to import by using import keyword, then space the package name called java.util in lower cases, dot scanner is a class, yes should be capital. So once we import this statement, then we can use the scanner class. Like one class code from another class, we are accessing by object creation. Similarly, for scanner class also, we have to create the object. So class name, object reference, assignment operator, then new again the class name. So here is the syntax difference is system.in is the syntax for this. Then once we have this, for our identification and also for console to pop up, add one print statement. So print what it's supposed to print, enter a number according to our requirement. So this is the print statement that I'm adding. Then after this, we need to give one integer input, one float. Then how to read integer? So scanner class object reference dot next int method, which will not take any input, and this will return an integer. You can capture into some integer type of variable of your choice. Then again, for a meaningful way of output, add one print statement, enter a float or a decimal. Then after this, read one float. How to read? Scanner class object reference. Then the next float method will allows to read a float or which returns a float, then store it into float variable of programmer choice. Now instead of passing values directly, now we have a one integer variable, and according to the order of first integer, then we have a float variable, then pass it. So this is how we can use a scanner class. In this example, we are reading int and float because method values are int and float. If it is a string or character and some other types, as we discussed just now, you can use appropriate methods. And one more thing, can we read multiple integers? Yes. Again, use sc.nextInt method and capture into some other variable, like a variable, b variable, c variable, if you want to read 3 integer values like that. Okay. Now, what's the output of this? So it will ask us to enter the values, then only it will give the result of it. Yeah. I hope this is understood. Let's also execute through Eclipse by adding these statements. So I move to Eclipse. So here the same thing, an independent class called a number, which has the method which returns void and it takes one integer, one float input, and from another class, object creation and method calling is there. So I'll modify these values. So currently, if we execute this program for any number of times, we are always going to get same output called 20.5. But to make it as customized input, what is the approach that we discussed? After package statement, add import space package name in which scanner class is there, java.util.scanner. Then after adding this package statement, import statement, then here create the object, scanner class object, then which takes an input of system.in. So then after this, add one print statement for the console to come up. what it's supposed to be. Enter an integer. Yeah, so then after this, read that integer. Scanner class object reference dot next int method, and then store it into some int variable of programmer choice. Then next, add one more print statement here. So the print statement gives the clarity of what to enter. Enter a decimal. So after this, read a decimal. Scanner class object reference dot. You can see these many methods we can access by using scanner class reference. But for reading a float, we have a method called next to float, which will not take any inputs, but which returns a float of programmer choice variable. You can use any variables as we are aware of. Now in place of int value, give int variable called x here. Then in place of float value, give a float variable f. So now after adding this, now save it and execute your program. So it is asking to enter integer. I'll enter 100. A decimal, then 200.5. Then finally, we are going to get the result of these two as a sum. So this is the use case of a scanner class. So depends on your requirement. You can use either int or float, character, string, string in word, string in line, all those things. Yeah. So there are alternate approaches also other than the scanner class that we'll discuss in some other video. And thank you.